Hello, my name is Dan, and this is Dan Explains. In different conversations I've had with people, I've occasionally found people who don't believe the speed of light is actually the real speed limit of things in the universe. These aren't people who are necessarily anti-science, they just can't imagine how there could be some kind of speed limit. And when you try to explain it to them, it just makes it seem even more ridiculous. One of the ways I've found to help make something easier to understand is to rescale it to human scales. So, what would happen if the speed of light was only 10 miles an hour? Let me explain. First off, I'm going to use imperial units since, if you haven't already noticed, I'm one of those backwards people known as an American. I'll sub everything with metric for the imperially impaired. Also, I'm going to ignore certain details like if you change the speed of light, everything in the universe scales with it. So, we're assuming that everything else in the world is normal except the speed of light, and therefore, the maximum speed of everything is 10 miles an hour. Also, for my visuals, I'm going to try to be as accurate as I can, but my tools are pretty rudimentary, so please don't nitpick if it's not exactly correct, unless I make a grievous error anyway. Now, what would happen if the speed of light was only 10 miles an hour? Besides making it super easy to dodge bullets with a Neo-like efficiency, if you sprinted, would you just suddenly stop accelerating when you got to 10 miles an hour and just stop being able to go faster? Well, not exactly. In order to see what would happen, we have to go to the equations of relativity. Well, actually, Lorentz equations, which came before relativity. I'm not going to go into what they are, but they are the tools we will use to explain what happens. So, let's say for a second you are normally capable of sprinting at 10 miles an hour. If you tried to sprint when the speed of light was only 10 miles an hour, you wouldn't be able to reach that speed, obviously. But what would happen? What magical thing stops you? Well, the closer to 10 miles an hour you get, the more the effects of relativity come into play. If you were only capable of going 10 miles an hour in our world, the speed you'd actually only get to is about 7.5 miles an hour in our hypothetical world. At least to everyone who is stationary. Every bit of speed you inched up, the harder it would be to go faster, almost like trying to roll a barrel as it's filling full of water. When it's empty, it takes very little effort, but when it's full, a lot. That also makes it harder to slow down as well. There's also the effect called foreshortening, also known as length contraction, where the faster you go, the more squished everything gets. Running at 7.5 miles an hour would cause you to be only half your regular thickness. Now, that'd be a fast diet if I ever saw one. Although, from your perspective, everything else would be looking thinner, not you. Also, people would be seeing your time pass at only half its normal speed. Unless you were approaching them anyway. At that point, you'd appear to speed up, since you'd be going almost as fast as the light coming off of you. Although they probably wouldn't actually be able to see you because the light coming off of you would also be blue shifted down into the ultraviolet. So, as you turn towards them to approach, your color would turn blue and then black. If you're going away, the opposite would happen. you would turn red and then black as your light redshifted. If you were on a plane or in a car, you'd be getting hit by some pretty hard radiation due to blue shifting. Due to the issues with color shifting, let's just ignore color shifting for the rest of the thought experiment. Hey, the effects team for Interstellar did, so I can too. If you swung your arm really fast, it would appear to bend in an odd shape. And the end of your hand that was moving near 10 miles an hour would appear to be skinnier. Now let's say you saw someone pedal by on a bike going 9 miles an hour, which would take about the same kinetic energy as going 16 miles an hour. If you looked at their wheels, they would appear bizarrely distorted, kind of like an egg standing on its wide end. The spokes at the top would appear very close together because the top of the tire is going even faster than the bike is. Not twice as fast though. That's why the spokes looked bunched. Where the wheel is in contact with the road, it's not moving relative to you, so the spokes are a normal distance apart. Now, things get really weird if you consider driving. Imagine you work somewhere 10 miles from your home. Let's assume the road is pretty direct with a high speed limit. Let's say 9.98 miles an hour. In this universe, speeding wouldn't be much of an issue. At that speed, your car would have the same momentum as if you were traveling 60 miles an hour in the real world. To your boss at work, it would seem like just a smidgen over an hour for you to get there from home, because the workplace is 10 miles away and you're going just under 10 miles an hour. However, to you, it wouldn't seem like it took that long. Once you got to the speed limit, the entire world around you would get foreshortened to only around 4% of its normal length. So the road, instead of being 10 miles long, would be less than half a mile long. While you're driving towards your workplace, the world around you would look squished, like looking through a wide-angle telescope with a huge zoom. Except, instead of just looking zoomed, it'd actually be as close as it looked. At less than half a mile, even going at just under 10 miles an hour, it doesn't take you that long to get there. Only about 22 minutes. Let's say you pass someone who is only going 9.95 miles an hour on your way to work, which is slightly slower than your 9.98 miles an hour. The small difference is actually a lot in kinetic energy. It would be the same as them going 45 miles an hour. So, 15 miles an hour slower than you in the real world. The people in the car you're passing would see you pass them at 9 miles an hour, not 0.03 miles an hour. However, the people standing on the side of the road observing you pass the other car would see you passing at only 0.03 miles an hour. Finally, once you got to work, your watch would be 38 minutes behind your boss's. Although, time dilation makes it appear as if the people at work are going slower than you as you're driving. Since you're driving towards them, they actually appear to be going faster because the light coming from them must go 10 miles an hour. Like I pointed out in my video on the twin paradox, the actual acceleration of time that makes more time pass for them than you only occurs when you're accelerating. But today, I'm only talking about what you perceive. So if you're interested in that, I've linked it in the description. If you wanted to call home to see if you need to pick anything on the way back from work, you wouldn't know for 2 hours after you started ringing your home phone if anyone picked up the other end, because The ringing takes an hour to get there and then another hour to know if the person picked up. At that point, a text would be easier. But surprisingly, the quickest way to communicate, at least for yourself, would be to just drive home, since it only takes 22 minutes. Even though, to your boss, you'd be gone for a little over 2 hours. I don't think he'd be very happy with that. Once you got back home, you'd be over an hour younger than your spouse. Your clocks would be off by 72 minutes. If you kept going to the same job for 25 years, assuming you worked 5 days a week without holidays, you'd be almost a year younger than your spouse. If you finally got fed up with this weird and frustrating world and jumped out a window to end it, would you hit the ground at less than 10 miles an hour and survive? Wrong. Even though you don't go any faster than 10 miles an hour, you would still have the same kinetic energy as someone normally would falling out a window. So, you'd still go splat, just in slow motion. If you like this video, please press the like button, subscribe to my channel, and ding the bell to get notified when I post new videos. Also, please support me on Patreon, link in the description. The more people support me, the more time I can dedicate to making videos like this one. So, until next time, have a great week.